Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Something Else podcast. My name is Gabriella, and I am your host. Happy Saturday. Yeah, it's Saturday. This is going up tomorrow. So, tomorrow's Sunday. And I know I said during the week, but forgive me. Look, this is production, this is management, this is the producer, this is the CEO. I am wearing a million cajillion hats all at once, but I'm committed to getting you some content every single week. So, today we are talking about desperation in dating. And I was watching a TikTok and it kind of inspired me to talk about this because I was like, what's not clicking? What's something is wrong with the medulla and the oblongata in the back? Because there's no way that we're succumbing to this plague, this pandemic of just an immense sense of desperation. And I think that people become desperate when they realize that they don't. I think people become desperate because they have a scarcity mindset. They don't believe that there's enough. They don't believe that things are going to work out for them. So they have to stoop to a level that they don't want to go to, or they have to settle for behavior and traits that they may not want in order to get something. And in dating, that's very common. We see a lot of men and a lot of women putting up with things that they said they would never put up with because they're becoming desperate. And they're like, oh, I'm never going to find somebody. So let me just pick the first person that comes along who treats me or loves me or shows me attention. And let me just jump in the boat with them. And I always told myself this because I too am in a season of singleness. I'm not dating anybody. I'm just putting my hand to the plow and doing the projects and the things that God has placed in my heart. And I'm positioning myself and praying and believing that God is going to connect me with the man that He has for me when He deems the time is right. That does not mean I am sitting in the house every weekend and I only go to church and I only go to work and I only go home. No, I go out, I look good, I smell good, and I'm positioning myself because a lot of the time, and I'm going to get back to where I was actually going, women, men, whoever, we're like, oh, God is gonna bring me somebody, but I'm not leaving my house. I'm confused. Unless it's gonna be like DoorDash or Uber Eats or the FedEx or the UPS guy, that's nonsense. I'm just gonna stay here every single weekend, and God is gonna bring me somebody. You gotta put your mouth where your money is. Like you gotta put your faith in your works. You gotta work your faith. If you are desiring to be with a certain kind of partner and this woman goes to places like this or this man goes to places like that, I think that you should be scouting where you desire to be. I don't feel like you should be in the house just sitting there like, oh my gosh, this great guy is going to come to my doorstep. And if he does, that's amazing. But a lot of the times, that's not how it works. If you want a man who's in tech and he loves, technology, you should be going to tech conventions and be interested in those things because that's what your interest is. If you want a woman who's into art, you should be going to Art Basel, you should be going to art exhibits, and you should be putting your best foot forward to possibly find someone who is interested in the things that you're interested in. So, that's my spiel on that. But yeah, desperation honestly comes from a scarcity mindset. And for believers, people who believe that God is going to bring them a partner, God is going to connect them with the person that will walk with them. When we become desperate, we undermine the power and the substance that God can deliver into our life. We undermine the abundance that He carries, that He is. And that's something that should never be. Like, we should never ever become desperate to the point where we settle for behavior, we settle for traits that we always said that, well, I don't want to be with the man who gambles, but this is a good guy, he treats me nice, so I'm going to be with this guy. Or I don't want to be with a woman who's, a little too out there, but she's a great girl and she shows me attention. So even if she does things that makes me uncomfortable, I'm still going to go after her. No, that's mm-mm. And contrary to popular belief, men should have standards just like women should have standards. That should be a thing across all genders. Like, you should have standards for dating, because what happens is when we abandon our standards, we get into relationships and we're upset at this person because they're not living up to the standard that we have, when in reality, in the first place, we should have abided by the standard that we have. One of my standards is that the man has to be a follower of Christ. He has to have a relationship with Christ, and he has to be able to cover our family. He has to be able to pray. And a lot of people have told me, like, you got to lower that, because there's not men who are like that, or you're not going to find that in a bunch of stuff. And honestly, people trying to speak down on my standard and trying to get me to humble myself to bring down the standard to be more realistic has nothing to do with me. If the Bible that I read, the Bible that I believe in, says that we shouldn't be unequally yoked, I am not going to go outside of that because I want to be with somebody. That's not right. Because what's going to happen is, a lot of us are in relationships where we've picked a person and we've said, okay, God, do you approve? And he's like, wait, you just made a whole life with this person. You just did all this stuff with this person. You've been with this person for 2 years, and now you're trying to get my approval? And at that point, you're already out of the will of God. You're already in your own will, and you're in the permissive will of God at that point, because you went ahead and you did whatever. I want to encourage you today. If you're at the crossroads, when you are dating someone, if your desire is to be married, you have to date with that in mind. You need to have that in mind. In this generation, we go with the flow. We're like, okay, well, I don't know if it's going to work out, but I'm just going to go with the flow. No, don't go with the flow, because the flow is going to lead you to a place and you're going to be like, why the heck am I here? I wasted so much time here. Yeah, because you went with the flow. You had no purpose. You had no vision for the relationship. So now the relationship is in a ditch. So it's important that we keep God as the compass of where our relationships should go. Even before you get into relationship, you should already be preparing and in prayer and in fasting and acknowledging God in your ways, so that he can direct your paths and he can put you in the right place to be found by the right person. Because we find people and we're like, okay, well, he don't really go to church like that, but I'm gonna tell him to come with me. So what if he doesn't want to go? And you go to church every Sunday and this man don't want to go. So what? Now you're in a place where you have to compromise. And so now what? We find ourselves in places like that constantly because we want to be loved. We want this person. What if that girl doesn't believe in God? She believes in the ancestors and crystals and doing all the stuff. And you think now that you're going to come as the great man of God that you are, and you're going to save and deliver her. Where does the discernment and the prayer and come in, where we're like, maybe I shouldn't go into a situation thinking that I'm going to change somebody and transform somebody into something that God has not told me to do? Where does the acknowledgement of God come into those spaces? So I want to encourage you, if you're watching this, do not get desperate. Do not get tired of waiting on God to deliver. Don't get complacent. Don't get complacent. You should want the best that God has for you. We find ourselves in situations like settling for certain behavior that we said, okay, well, I'm not going to deal with that. And because we don't want to be by ourselves, we find ourselves in these situations where we're bogged down. Now we're coming to God and we're like, God, please save her. Please save him. Please do a work for me. Wait, what? Let me tell you something. And I say this every episode because I have to tell you something. God is the only people. Let me tell you something. God is the only one that can genuinely change a person. He's the only one that can genuinely change a person. Jesus is the catalyst for change. We have to stop trying to change people that we meet. Your job is not to change anybody. If you meet somebody and they are living a particular lifestyle or they are living a particular way and they have particular traits and behaviors, if you cannot accept that person with zero change and love that person as they are, you might want to withdraw. Because what if that person doesn't change? Are you still going to be happy with that person or are you going to be upset? We live in a time and age where the world is like, oh my gosh, you have to find somebody. You have to be with somebody. You have to be with somebody at all costs. Why? Because there's something wrong with you if you're 32, 33 and you ain't got no man. There's something wrong with you at 35, 36 if you ain't got no woman. There's got to be something wrong. And we live in a society where even at like 25, like me, I'm 25 and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? What is happening? What is clicking? What's ticking? Time is ticking, Lord. And it's so easy to get in a place where you get desperate, where you're just like, okay, yeah, I'm believing in God, but I'm going to try to force his hand and force him to put a stamp on something that he has not put a stamp on. When you find yourself in relationships that are clearly against what the Lord has said, that is clearly against what the Lord has said over your life, and you sit there and you get comfortable there, just know that you're out of the will of God. He can use your situation to put you back in his will, but we never want to be out of the will of God because his provision is not there. His grace is not there. You don't want to purposely be out of his will because you want to do what you want to do. We're in a place where we're running on E. God is a merciful Father. He is a merciful Father. Even in our ignorance, he will not let us perish. And that's the thing that we have to be so grateful that we have a God who's so merciful to us. He won't let us perish. Even when we're doing whatever we're doing, living against what he wants us to do and acting like he doesn't exist, he still will not allow us to perish. But that shouldn't be a go ahead for us to keep living outside of his will, knowing that he's a merciful Father. We shouldn't take his grace for granted. And the Bible talks about that. We shouldn't continue to still sin and continue to still take the gift of Christ's sacrifice for granted when we know that there's that abounding grace, you know? So what prompted me to really talk about this was I saw something on TikTok, and that's where I was going before I went on that TED Talk, where the woman was like, she is going on a first date and they're going to do her taxes. And she was like, oh, the guy stood me up and something, something, something. And I was astounded. On the first date, you're going to have this man do your taxes with your address, your social security, and all of your income information? I was flabbergasted because why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? That's a security issue. You don't know that man from a can of paint. Y'all have been texting for a few days, and he's going to do your taxes with your social security. And then you're going to wonder why someone took out a $75,000 F-150 in your name because you did that. Why would you do that? And it's like, I was like, where are we as women falling short here? Where are the synapses, the neurons not firing? Where is the gap? Because, in your brain, the neurons fire. And there's like that little space where so there's a breakdown somewhere in the middle there as to why it's not firing correctly. And I was trying to understand what's not clicking. And I was like, desperation. Like, the people are getting desperate. They're forgetting that there's people out there. There is people out there. There's someone out there who is praying for someone like you. There's someone out there who is seeking a woman or a man like you. There's someone out there who's like, I really desire A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they listed everything that you are. So why are you getting desperate and you're settling and you're falling into these situations with someone who doesn't appreciate you? There's someone who desires you. Like, they have it in their journal. They have it in their notes. And they said he's A B C D E F G. She's A B C D E F G. And you're that person. So when you find yourself getting in these situations where you're entertaining people who you know will take you off the course, you have to be reminded that there's more than enough available for you. I can't I can't, and I'm speaking to myself when I say this. There is more than enough available for you. I really do believe we serve a God of more than enough. I can't wrap my head around the fact that there's scarcity in God. Is there really scarcity in you? Like, there can't be. I just truly don't believe that. So when I find myself getting tired of waiting, I find myself creeping into the mode or the action of desperation. I'm like, wait, come back. We need you to come back to the drawing table. Let's come back to the drawing table. Because if you believe that God is going to come through for you, when you start to do actions that show that you do not believe that God is going to come through for you, you don't believe that he will, for real. It was nice when you said it. It sounded good to post on your story. It sounded good to say it in the podcast. It sounded good to say it in front of someone, but is it really that easy to live it out? So when you begin to show that you don't believe that God is going to come through for you, you basically telling yourself you a liar. And you're basically telling God, I don't have enough faith in you. I don't have enough faith in you, for real. I don't believe that you're going to come through for me. And the word of the Lord says that God knows the desires of your heart. That's why it's so important to pray in the will of God. You got to pray in the will of God. And you need to say, Lord, let your will be done in my life. I have this desire. I want this. Let your will be done in my life. Lead me to the woman or the man that is in your will for me. Because some of the things that we want, God does not want for us. You want a basketball player and he's telling you that you're going to be with the pilot. But you over here at all of the games sitting courtside hoping to meet this basketball player, and that's not for you. That's not for you. You want a woman who is an Instagram famous influencer and your wife is really a nurse who works in the pediatric ICU unit somewhere at some hospital. That's not for you. You need to pray that God's will be done in your life so that you can see the way he wants you to go. A lot of the times we want some things, but that's not what we need. That's not what we need. God knows what we need. He knows what he's trying to birth and produce in us. Our eyes just need to be open so that we can see that. So don't get desperate. Don't give up. Don't fall into the trap of the world and think, I need to find a man, any man. I need to find a woman, any woman, because I'm tired of being by myself. I'm tired of waiting. I want to be married, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Like, don't get wrapped up in that. Don't get desperate. I'm telling you, don't get desperate. A lot of these stories that you hear these people talking about, oh, and you could get married and get a divorce and yep, because they got desperate and they rushed to the altar and now they're getting a divorce. That's what it is. Marriage is not the problem. The people are the problem. So don't get desperate. If you have standards and you have things that you desire in a partner, You got to be very careful when you say, okay, well, I'm just going to throw this to the side. Okay, well, maybe that standard is too high. I'm not going to, because once you start to subtract what you want and what you desire, when a person comes to you after you've subtracted all these things, then you're mad at the person over something that they have no control over. You have control over that. So don't get desperate. Don't get desperate. Hang in there. Stay the course. But don't get desperate. So that was this week's episode, Desperation in Dating. I got right into it. I'd be like, okay, let's get straight to the meat. And the meat is the bacon, some arugula, some cheese, some butter, and some red onions, some red peppers. I don't really like arugula, but that's a conversation for another day. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Something Else podcast. We are on all social media. You can find us there. My name is Gabriella. I am your host. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.